The eight-point socioeconomic agenda and the upcoming Philippine Development Plan, PDP 2023-2028, is intended to address the issues like that, and that is to accelerate poverty reduction while ensuring the rapid growth that the plan envisages for the medium term will also be very inclusive. So it's everybody's boat is lifted by the rising tide, as they say, and that way again inequality will be reduced in a significant way and will support the poverty reduction thrust of the government.
From the nation's capital, all sides, all the time, I'm Robbie Alampay.
And I'm Gretchen Ho. The big story tonight.
While the Philippines has made significant strides in reducing poverty over the past decades, income inequality remains high. That's according to the latest World Bank report.
Still, the administration remains confident that it can address the gap between the so-called super rich and those from the lower to middle income groups. Camille Samonte with the big story.
The Philippines ranks 15 out of 63 countries in terms income inequality according to the World Bank. The multilateral lender reports that only the top 1% of the Philippine earners captured 17% of the total national income. 14% of the income is meanwhile being shared by the bottom 50%. The World Bank attributed the inequality to unequal opportunities, slow access to tertiary education among low-income households, inequality in returns to college education, and social norms putting the heavier burden of childcare on women. In a statement, the World Bank said that the Philippines was still able to alleviate poverty from 49.2% in 1985 to 16.7% in 2018. The problem is inequality continues to persist. Despite this, the Philippine government is confident that it can alleviate the growing income inequality in the country. In a palace briefing, NEDA Chief Arsenio Balisacan said the 8-point socio-economic agenda as well as the upcoming Philippine Development Plan for 2023 to 2028 are designed to address poverty and income inequality in the country.
The eight-point socioeconomic agenda and the upcoming Philippine Development Plan, PDP 2023-2028, is intended to address the issues like that, and that is to accelerate poverty reduction while ensuring that the rapid growth that the plan envisages for the medium term will also be very inclusive. Economic opportunities will not only for the upper income groups, but even more importantly for the lower and middle income groups. Inequality will be reduced.
Balisacan added that it will take everyone from government agencies to members of the private sector and civil society to their share in shaping policies and contributing actions to improve the lives of Filipinos. For News 5, Camille Samonte, We Are One News.
Here to give us his insights on the World Bank report, we have with us live by Zoom economist and pamantasan ng lungsod ng Maynila President Emmanuel Leyco. Good evening and welcome to the big story, Professor Leyco.
Good evening, Robbie, and good evening,
Gretchen.
Gretchen. Okay. I think the explanation by the World Bank is very descriptive. It's leading. First, when they cited income inequalities or opportunities that are not fairly distributed, lack of access to education, I think those are indicative of the structure of our economy. So, for example, the poor are basically those who are minimum wage earners, whose income are vulnerable to economic shifts. However, the wealthy people are those who own companies, who own shares in companies, and therefore their assets continue to grow, even with the economic shifts that we are seeing right now. And then in terms of the policies of the government, I think we need to take heed with what our economic indicators are telling us. So, for example, when they say the inflation is going up, I think we have to go deeper. Whose inflation is being affected? When they say 7.7%, that is for the aggregate number for everybody nationwide. However, when you talk about the poor, their inflation is so much higher than the rich, and the flexibility of the poor when it comes to managing inflation is so different from how the rich will manage their inflation. So, for example, if their income, because of income, they could no longer buy their food, there's nothing that they can do, so they just go hungry.
Yes.
So we have to understand the economic indicators better. The inflation index for the poor is so much difficult, so much worse when it comes to
Yes.
overall inflation.
Well, Professor, you mentioned indicators. We'll also talk about trends. Sabi ni Secretary Balisacan, the 8-point socioeconomic agenda is precisely designed to address these things, inequality as well as inclusivity. Ito pong mga nabanggit niya, are these aspirational or do we actually have indicators, even right now, that we are trending in the right direction?
Actually, we have indicators that can manage our approaches. So, for example, when we look at GDPs, that is not a good indicator because that is an average per capita when we are looking at that. But when we're looking at inflation, that should be more indicative of where the economy is right now. So, in terms of their responses to these economic shifts. So when they say we will increase interest rate, that is not helping the poor. In fact, when they increase interest rate, that is more incentive for the rich who have excess income to put their money in the banks, and they will earn more money. Meanwhile, interest rate will make cost of living for the poor so much higher, and therefore their lives even more difficult.
Professor, there are two terms here that come out of the discussion. One is income inequality, the other is poverty reduction. What would be the difference between the two, and which would you say would be the better metric in which we could anchor our policies on and our agenda, the government agenda, to make sure that it hits the right markets, that we alleviate poverty where it should be alleviated?
Well, income inequality, I think, will be a #1 indicator. Minimum wage does not address the requirements or does not put the people in manageable position where they can buy what they need. Our minimum wage earners are so much more than those who are earning from their shares or from their deposits, from the type of assets that they have. So when it comes to targeting the economy, wage earners like those who are earning only the minimum should be the focus of our policy. So I think the government can do better by giving more attention to how we can increase minimum wages so that the people will be able to address what their basic requirements are. And then when it comes to opportunities for social mobility through education, I think that is another opportunity, another vehicle by which the government will be able to address poverty. Like right now, the K-12 barely made an impact on making the people who can only afford to sustain their education through grade 12 have a decent income when they get employed. People or the companies are still looking for those who are able to finish college. So again, education is another aspect by which the government will be able to address income inequalities and address the policy interventions that the government considers when they are trying to manage the economy. Definitely, increasing interest rate is anti-poor. It is not going to create a dent on poverty alleviation. In fact, it will make the people's lives even harder because the burden of higher interest rates are passed on to the poor.
Yet, Professor, we hear from the administration that they are targeting to reduce poverty but from 18% to 9% by the end of President Bongbong Marcos' term, and they use poverty reduction as their main focus for the 8-point agenda. Do you think they should change terms, leading to focusing on income inequality? And what would you say about the figures that have come out? Top 1% of the Philippine earners have 17% of the total national income.
I think that is the picture being portrayed by the economic structure that we have. If you are a farmer, you barely make anything. And when it is compared to what the landlords are making a lot. So right there, you can see that the income from our agricultural sector is not equitable, it's not fair. And it will not bring them out of poverty, and the population of the farmers is quite big. When it comes to minimum wage earners, they're not going to get out of poverty earning the minimum. So right there, if the government does not address income inequalities through restructuring agriculture, through restructuring minimum wages, I don't think having a 9% or reducing it by 50% by a period of time will not be possible.
All right, thank you so much for giving us your outlook on the recent study by the World Bank. Economist and pamantasan ng lungsod ng Maynila President Emmanuel Leyco. After the break, senators question the seeming overlap in the mandate of the Research Institute for Tropical Medicine, or RITM, and the proposed Institute of Virology. We'll discuss this issue with the Executive Director of the DOST Philippine Council for Health Research and Development, Dr. Jaime Montoya. When the big story returns, keep it here on One News.
The U.S. government's attempt to ban products linked to forced labor in China contains a loophole, and Shein, the Chinese fast fashion giant, is slipping through it. Bloomberg News had these Shein garments tested in a lab, and it found that they were made with cotton from China's Xinjiang region. The U.S. government's banned cotton imports from Xinjiang last year and considers all products from there to be made with forced labor. The United Nations has said China's treatment of the Uyghur people, who are predominantly Muslim, may constitute crimes against humanity. The U.S. ban sent American retailers into a frenzy to prove that they don't source cotton from Xinjiang. But Shein has fallen under the radar due to what's called the de minimis trade exemption. Individual shipments to customers fall below the $800 value threshold that triggers reporting requirements to U.S. Customs and Border Protection, meaning Shein avoids the scrutiny applied to bulk imports. In a statement, Shein didn't deny that the cotton comes from Xinjiang, but said it has taken steps to ensure they comply with local laws and regulations. The crackdown presents a challenge. Acknowledging its cotton comes from Xinjiang would risk alienating consumers. Denying it would risk angering China's government, which rejects allegations of forced labor, saying they're only jobs creations programs. For U.S. policymakers, Shein's position demonstrates the limits of government attempts to keep the products of forced labor out of the domestic market. Shein is on track to sell $8 billion worth of clothing in the U.S. this year, about a third of its business worldwide. Labor activists and U.S. apparel retailers are calling for more awareness of the company's labor practices and for Congress and the administration to act.
そういうのをもっと不安を作るために活動してくれないかなと思っています。
You're watching the big story here on One News. Senators are questioning a proposal to abolish the Research Institute for Tropical Medicine, RITM, to make way for two new agencies that they say may have similar functions. Camille Samonte is back with this report.
Senators are flagging a potential overlap in the mandate of the Research Institute for Tropical Medicine, or RITM, and the proposed Institute of Virology. During the hearing of the Senate Subcommittee on Health and Demography, senators tackled the respective functions of the RITM and the Virology Center. What makes things more complicated is a separate proposal for a Center for Disease Control and Prevention, or CDC. Officials of the Department of Health told senators that under the current proposal, the CDC will absorb the RITM and will retain its functions.
Diba, na-chop-chop na si RITM and they will live on in CDC. Bakit may bagong virology na the way you described it, sa pagkaintindi ko, itong mga vaccine research and sabi niyo manufacturing, diba that's the mandate of RITM?
RITM Director Celia Carlos explained that their mandate is focused on research pertaining to diseases, medicines, and vaccines related to humans, while the Virology and Vaccine Institute will focus on research of covering other organisms, like plants and animals.
The research component of the Virology Institute will cover not only research on humans, viruses affecting humans, but viruses affecting animals and plants as well. So it's a very broad mandate for the Virology Institute.
Sub-panel chairperson Senator Pia Cayetano observed a seeming overlap in the functions of two institutions, but Carlos said they will create an executive board to identify the research agenda for each agency to prevent any overlap in functions. However, Cayetano suggested to strengthen and widen the scope of RITM instead of abolishing it altogether.
Hindi ba pwedeng i-support na lang si RITM, i-expand nga yung function niya? Is kasi if they say na RITM only does this, sa humans lang, o di dagdagan, imbis na mag-create ng bago.
The RITM responded saying it would have a hard time responding to wide-scale outbreaks like COVID-19.
RITM alone cannot perform a massive response to an outbreak as big as COVID-19 or any other outbreak, for instance. And we need other bureaus of the DOH, such as the Epidemiology Bureau, for the statistics and information. We needed the Disease Prevention and Control Bureau for the policy dissemination and the drafting.
Senators are now asking for a detailed outline on the structure and functions of RITM and the proposed Virology Institute. Cayetano also wants more clarification on the matter of fund allocation. For News 5, Camille Samonte, We Are One News.
To give us his insights on plans to introduce these new agencies, we have Dr. Jaime Montoya over Zoom. He is the Executive Director of the Philippine Council for Research and Development. Welcome to the big story, Dr. Montoya.
Yes, good evening, Robbie and Gretchen, and to all our viewers.
Sir, so your thoughts on this? I mean, we're obviously the RITM, the Research Institute on Tropical Medicine, is being treated as the base on all of these discussions. Now, between that and the proposed Virology Institute, and then for that matter, a proposed CDC, do we have room and reason for all of these different agencies?
Yes, definitely we have room for all of these agencies. First of all, let's look at the big picture. When you respond to a public health emergency such as COVID-19, it actually entails a whole of government and whole of society approach. R&D is just one component of that, and that can be handled by RITM. However, when you look at the overall policies, plans, and programs that have to be developed to respond to that emergency, it entails more than the capacity of the existing RITM. It will include, of course, the capacity building in preparation for pandemics or future pandemics. And I think what we have to mention is that, research institutes like the Research Institute for Tropical Medicine is part of the research network. But someone has to orchestrate all of these research efforts so that they're all aligned along the national priorities and avoid duplication. That will be the function of the Virology and Vaccine Institute of the Philippines. It will formulate the National Virology Research Agenda, of which RITM will be one of the implementing partners, in order to ensure that everything is responsive to the needs of the country.
Yeah, but Doc, I mean, I think, I hope I'm not misrepresenting what Senator Cayetano's points here, but you have the general policy as well that needs to be attended to, and she's saying essentially that, we have the proposed CDC for that. And then for the more specific tasks, let's say in research, whether pang tao or including ang flora, she's saying then why not just expand the mandate of one? Whether it's RITM or this new proposed Virology Institute. The point being that, maybe you could conceivably have two agencies, maybe CDC, but particularly on the level of RITM and a Virology Institute, why not just have one and then expand that mandate there?
Well, first of all, the CDC will be focusing on surveillance, responding to public health emergencies. The VIP focuses on virology and how R&D will respond to that crisis. So the overall conductor of response to public health emergency is CDC, and RITM is already performing that function. It does surveillance activities for leading cause of morbidity and mortality, and of course for pandemics like COVID-19. However, for it to assume oversight for agricultural, environmental, and industrial viruses, that would be a very big undertaking, would entail not just scientists involved in the human biology and human sciences, but also veterinary, animal, and plant sciences. And that has to be orchestrated by an oversight institution. And that we envision to be the Virology and Vaccine Institute of the Philippines. The other thing I'd like to emphasize is that as of now, we do not have a single, and I should emphasize, a single center that does the full cycle of vaccine development from proof of concept to market. We don't have that. RITM does the clinical trials, but only a part of that cycle. We have to start from the proof of concept up to the market for us to be competitive and to be self-reliant as far as vaccine development is concerned. And that will be done by the Virology and Vaccine Institute of the Philippines. Again, in cooperation with other agencies and institutes that are already doing some kind of research, but we have to, orchestrate and harmonize them and have them work all together, aligned with the national research agenda so that we avoid duplication and we focus our resources on those researches that are really important, that will address national priorities.
Doctor, do you agree with a proposal to include RITM under the CDC? And what are the possible overlaps with research in terms of the RITM and the Virology Institute that could possibly guide policy in case these agencies, separate agencies, are crafted?
Yeah, well, based on the mandate of the VIP, the Virology and Vaccine Institute of the Philippines, it will develop plans, programs, and policies on virology research and development. RITM implements the research, but they do not produce the programs and the policies that will be the basis for determining what researches will be done. And that has been shown by our experience when we established our Philippine National Health Research System, that there has to be a lead agency or institute that does all of the orchestration, and so that all the projects and programs are aligned. And that, we think, will be done by the Virology and Vaccine Institute of the Philippines. RITM will still continue to do its work. And in fact, if I may say, we need more research centers. So even if other centers are also doing similar work, that's good, because no single center can do the research work as far as virology is concerned. If I may just cite an example, the Philippine Cancer Center was established similar to the mandate of the VIP. It oversees research for cancer and develops the national agenda for research on cancer. Many institutes are already doing cancer research, but why do we have to have a Philippine Cancer Center? Because someone has to orchestrate and harmonize and unify all of these researches, and that is the Philippine Cancer Center. That's the model we're also following. Now, the RITM currently is positioned, the institute that is best positioned to assume the role of the major functions of the CBC, and that complements what we're going to do because we provide the evidence and the R&D support for such.
Okay. Dr. Montoya, maraming salamat po. Dr. Jaime Montoya, Executive Director of the Philippine Council for Research and Development. And we will have more stories after the break. Keep it here on One News.
Hardest part for me as somebody being on the organization side of layoffs is that you know that people's lives are at stake, and if you are an empathetic person, which I, for better or worse, am, you can't help but think about the impact that this is going to have on the people who have a job one day and not the next day.
This is Camilla Boyer. She had the misfortune of working at 3 companies in the space of 9 months that did layoffs. While there is definitely not a good way of firing people, there is absolutely a bad way.
There's 3 really important things to bear in mind. First of all, don't fire a mass number of people over Zoom or over email. Don't diminish their contributions to the company. Make sure you're showing gratitude for the time and effort and love, in lots of cases, that people have put into their jobs at that company. It's much harder to trust a leader who isn't capable of owning their own fallibility than it is to trust one who will own up to their mistakes and be willing to kind of take that on board and move forward. Accountability, empathy, closure. It's really important to treat the people who are being laid off with that respect, giving the people impacted a chance to say goodbye, treating them in that human way and not just cutting them off from every system right away goes a long way towards the experience of both the people who are leaving and the people who are remaining in terms of that ability to move on.
Climate change is a very complex issue. If you go deep enough and you learn enough about it, it becomes very personal. When I was young, I was originally a surfer. The inception of all of this environmental activism came from a particular instance that I'd asked my parents about why I couldn't go surfing when it rained. And that was because all of the pollution runs down from the land into the ocean and you can get like an ear infection, that sort of thing. And it was a breakthrough moment for me as a kid, knowing that what I did on land had an impact so far away that it made itself present in the ocean and changed that to a degree where you couldn't go in it because it was slightly dangerous. And that opened my eyes to a lot of different environmental catastrophes happening. I was learning about what the contributing factors are and how it's going to be affecting us. Coinciding with this, I had just got on a television show and I started to amass this following on social media, and I was in a position to share that. It's a very big issue, and because of that, a lot of people sort of get spooked by that, almost like it's a lot to take in and you feel quite small and like you can't do anything.
You're still watching The Big Story here on One News. The Bicameral Conference Committee has convened today to begin its deliberations on the proposed 5.26 trillion peso national budget for 2023. Both chambers will have to reconcile the discrepancies in the respective budget versions. The Bicam Committee wants to ratify the report by next week or before Congress adjourns for Christmas.
Paloyulo's younger siblings are following in his footsteps as they both dominate in a gymnastics tilt in Thailand. Let's get to know them more in my report. Leonor Yulos brought home pride for the country as they bagged 10 medals in the recent JRC Artistic Gymnastics Stars Championship held in Thailand. Kaloy Yulos' younger brother, Carl Eldrew, won 6 gold medals, including 1 in the floor event, while the youngest of the Yulos siblings, Eliza, finished the competition with 4 golds. It was an unexpected result after the athletes were sidelined for 2 years due to the pandemic. Eliza and the rest of the young Pinoy gymnasts revealed that they had to do online training until restrictions were eased. For them, all the hard work and sacrifice finally paid off.
Masaya po kasi parang makakakuha ulit ako ng mga medalya. Parang dadami po ulit. Pero hindi ko po in-expect na mananalo po ako ng gold. Sobrang saya ko po kasi lahat po ng pinagpagutan namin ni Coach Tico first aid po.
Iza Yulo was inspired to take on gymnastics at the age of 4. She used to go to the gym and watch brother Kaloy do amazing moves.
Parang gusto ko rin po tumambling-tumbling nun. Tapos nung mga 2 years old po, lagi po ako nasa gym. Lagi po ako nandun.
And just like her brother, Iza also wants to become an elite gymnast. But she also understands the pressure and dedication needed to pursue the sport.
Na-inspire po ako sa kuya ko dahil sa hard work niya. So, kailangan pa din po magtrabaho na maigi para makarating din po ako doon.
Now at age 13, Iza and her team look to improve on their skills and plan to train in the United States. For head coach Dico Ili, this would help elevate the women's artistic gymnastics program of the country.
Yung goal kasi hindi lang naman sa isang atleta, hindi lang kay Eliza, but for the whole women's artistic gymnastics to be elevated. Yung gusto natin, kaya coaches are also on board para yung matututunan ng atleta at ng coaches will be transferred to the next generation.
But when are we going to see the Yulo siblings together in a competition for the country? Coach Dico says it could happen as early as 2025.
When it comes to the age qualification, 16 ang babae, mas mababa. So by the time na nag-SEA Games sa Thailand, pwede nang mag-compete si Eliza pag nag-qualify siya plus si Kaloy.
Gusto ko po magsabay-sabay po kami sa Olympics.
After their stint in Thailand, Eliza Yulo and her team will be gearing up for the Asian Juniors Championship next year. Gretchen Ho, We Are One News. What a family, no?
Oo nga. I mean, you'd like to think nasa dugo, but you'd also, more important, like to say, nasa training.
Tama.
And obviously, their access is paying off. Hopefully, more people get access.
Mas confident din yung mga kapatid ni
Oo
Kami
nga,
sa kanya.
lalo na yung babae, no?
Oo, kakatawa. So, we got how many more gold medals? 15? Times ano eh. Pressure agad eh. Look forward to that.
But anyway, that's the big story tonight. For more updates, follow News 5, the Philippine Star, and Business World Online. You may also log on to onenews.ph for more analysis. Ako po si Robbie Alampay.
The big story is also available via Signal Play app. Make a free account now at signalplay.com and stream One News anytime, anywhere. Ako po si Gretchen Ho. Stay safe, Philippines.
We are One News, all sides, all the time.